Reading from the book Prayer by M. L. Andreasen. Introduction. In some respects, this is the most godless age the world has ever known. At the same time, there is probably more praying being done than ever before. If this seems paradoxical, consider this. Millions, even hundreds of millions of men have been called to arms in recent years. Most of the men who went into battle prayed, even if they had never prayed before. Many of the young men were away from home for the first time. They had been given a Bible or a New Testament and were deeply moved as they bade farewell to loved ones and promised Mother not to forget God. Millions of prayers ascended to God before each battle or invasion, as men lay in their foxholes awaiting the 0 hour. Under such conditions, men pray. If millions of men who were called to the colors prayed, what shall we say of the millions of fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, sweethearts and relatives who daily prayed for their loved ones in the service or on the battle line? It may be supposed that there was hardly a family anywhere that did not have some loved one for whom they prayed. And this is true not merely of so-called Christian countries, but of all. We are safe in saying that never has the whole world had its attention called to prayer as at this time, and never before have so many prayed. We read of men praying while hanging on to a plank with no help near, praying in a plane as it is shot to pieces and they are about to bail out, praying in dangerous outposts where death seemed certain, and God heard their prayers and miraculously saved them. From this we understand that while the evil one is at work maiming and killing, God is at work calling men to Him. If we should inquire if this praying brought about a corresponding permanent increase in godliness, we would regretfully answer that this does not seem to be the case. On the contrary, there has been a definite increase in juvenile delinquency and an overall increase in crime in general. It would be quite useless to cite statistics to confirm this, for the figures would be obsolete before they were published, nor would a portrayal of actual conditions serve any purpose. The reader is fully aware of the definite decline in manners and morals. Conduct that was frowned upon a short time ago has become commonplace. There was a time when we thought conditions could never be worse, but we were mistaken. How are we to account for these conditions, in view of the much praying of which we have spoken? I believe that the reason can be found in the motives that activate the one who prays. Prayers and promises made because of fear or to escape danger are often forgotten when the crisis is past. As men look to God from lonely outposts or foxholes, were their prayers grounded in a deep, abiding faith in God? Or were they caused by mortal fear of death and of the possibility that shortly the men would have to give an account to their Maker? Did men who spent the last day of their leave in unnameable debaucheries and wild excesses of all kinds immediately change their course of action and turn to the Lord with their whole heart? As I visited army camps, I was reminded of the times when Mother sent me out to catch a chicken and get it ready for the oven. With a knife in hand, I would chase the chicken and pause for a breath as it evaded me. Instead of using the pause to get away from me as far as possible, the chicken ceased to run as soon as I did and began to pick up scraps, apparently unaware of and unconcerned about the fate that awaited it. Some men exhibit no more sense than did my chicken. Were there not many who found God in their war experience? Yes, many, thank God. But the overwhelming number forgot God and their promises to Him, and the result is seen in the upsurge of sin and crime in the wars after years, as is always the case. Nevertheless, God brought more men to a decision for religious faith in the foxholes than all the evangelists of earth could accomplish. His hand is not shortened. He has means of which men know little. God is not the author of war and calamity any more than he is of sin. But he uses these disasters to call men's attention to the only source of help. He has implanted deeply in every heart a consciousness of himself to which men instinctively turn in moments of sorrow or danger. This can be explained on no other ground than that God has made the human heart for himself, and that souls find no rest until they find it in God. A national disaster comes, and men turn to God. High government officials are faced with a decision that may cost the lives of millions, and they appeal to heaven. A great responsibility is suddenly placed upon a man in high position, and we find a president on his knees. A family stands at the bedside of a loved one, and prayer is their only hope. Men who have never prayed before unashamedly acknowledge that their own resources are at an end, and so they pray. Can we draw any other conclusion than that God has placed in the human heart longings and desires that ordinarily do not come to the surface, but become apparent in times of distress and danger? Deep in the human heart, crushed by the tempter, feelings lie buried that grace can restore. The fear or sorrow that awakens the consciousness of God may not be the highest motive for seeking God, any more than was the hunger that brought the prodigal son to turn home. But God is willing to accept almost any ground as long as it accomplishes his purpose. So the father received the prodigal with open arms, though the son's purpose was chiefly to get something to eat. God accepts and uses sorrow, hunger, affliction, disaster, fear, in calling men. This conception of God's methods of work makes his presence very real to the believing soul. He sees God at work everywhere, using every means at his disposal to call men to repentance. He knows that God has not left himself without a witness, and that every man has this witness in himself, so that they are without excuse. Romans 1, verse 20. This should give the Christian worker a strong hope for success in his task of helping men to find God. He knows that God is at work and has implanted in every heart a responsive chord to the call of God. Men may resist the call, but with God on their side, they are not discouraged. We therefore believe that the present is an opportune time to call attention to prayer and what it may do or not do for souls in need. The situation in the world demands a deeper consecration on the part of God's people. The work that must be done can never be accomplished by merely using better plans or new devices. It will not be finished by might or by power, but by the Spirit of God. It will be finished by prayer and deeper consecration by men and women who know their God and who go forward in faith. That's the end of the introduction for the book Prayer by M.L. Andreasen. I hope the reading was decent for you. This book has been on my bookshelf for over 10 years, and I have never read it. So this will be my first time reading through the book, and I expect to gain insights and blessings, and I hope you do as well.